Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Anthony Tamberelli. As you heard, I am the Watershed Ambassador for the Upper Passaic, Whippany, and Rockaway watersheds. So Watershed Ambassadors have been around for surprisingly a good number of years. So there's a chance that some of you may have heard about this program, but there's a chance that some of you may not have, and that's totally fine. So this presentation is going to give a little bit of a rundown of exactly what this program does, not necessarily just for my sake, but also for future opportunities after my term even, where the next Watershed Ambassador might be able to provide some service for anyone who is interested. Now, total disclaimer to be transparent. I have been speaking and teaching all day at a high school about macroinvertebrates. So my voice is a little hoarse and not as powerful as I would like it to be, but I'm still going to try my best to go through this. And of course, if anyone has any questions during this presentation, I am more than happy to kind of re-clarify things or even go more specific on something that is of interest. Because I'll be going about the basics of the program, but also some examples of things we have done. So before I begin, any quick questions from the peanut gallery?
No, go on.
Awesome, perfect. So you've already had a little bit of a snippet of who I am, and actually some of the major points are exactly as Sela described, but to kind of re-clarify things, before I found this program, I was actually more imbued into research than you might expect. I had served technically 5 years at Montclair State University doing a combined bachelor's master's program for marine biology. And I totally agree that it's somewhat ironic that a school in the northeast of New Jersey would still have a program that goes down to Barnegat Bay to do research. But it really did teach me a lot, kind of paired with my curriculum, my academia, to not only have experience in the classroom, but to apply it to a real world setting. And during my graduate assistantship, which helped pay me through my master's degree, I was actually able to get some experience in teaching and get familiar with what it's like to be in a classroom setting and to guide a lesson to multiple people. So that connected technically to my other two pursuits in life, where I was a visitor service assistant at Round Valley, kind of guiding people through the park, but also in my current term now as a Watershed Ambassador, those skills still came very important. Not just how to teach people about a topic, but how I can use my previous skills and expertise to teach people about the world around us, specifically the environmental setting. So about my program, there's definitely a lot to take in, but on the broader sense of what AmeriCorps is, just in case some people are not familiar, it's essentially a domestic Peace Corps, where they still have the same themes of going out and providing volunteer opportunities to the community, but AmeriCorps is just national, just located inside the United States. And a lot of these AmeriCorps programs are federally funded, so they are supported. These volunteers do get a stipend, such as myself, but there are a lot of sub-programs, to say the least, such as my own. And of course, regardless of the program we're talking about, still have those same goals of providing some sort of volunteer service and engaging the community and helping people, if you will. But of course, specifically about my program nestled within the AmeriCorps umbrella, this is also technically tied to the Department of Environmental Protection. So we're not directly a government program, even though we are provided some grant money from this. And as I'll disclaim a little bit, a lot of our data that we sample goes to the government as well, so they can put this into their integrated reports and kind of get a sense of the quality of our streams. But of course, how exactly this program works, it really would not function without the help of Watershed Ambassadors. We have 20 Watershed Ambassadors scattered throughout the state, aptly named because of the different WMAs or watershed management areas that are also numbered 1 through 20. And for those who are virtually here, it'll be the picture on the right. You'll kind of see the borders scattered throughout New Jersey. This is not actually delineated on a county or municipal level. This is a watershed level. So any area of land where water is going to be draining into, we can actually delineate where the top of these ridges are and then predict where the water is going to flow into these major basins. So I'm part of the Upper Passaic, Whippany, and Rockaway watershed because those are the major water bodies that are flowing through my area, for example. But you'd imagine that this program is quite broad in the sense that anyone can apply as long as they have enough experience. A lot of my colleagues do have master's degrees, but some actually came out of a justice major, so nothing related to science. But with all of our skills and expertise and backgrounds, you would imagine that we provide such a multifaceted resource, if you will, a free resource, not to mention, to all of our communities, that we've been able to make a large impact, even in the 10 months that my current cohort has been running in. But that's even just the watershed ambassadors. Fortunately, this year, we actually were able to fill all of our source water protection ambassador positions as well. And the SWAPs, as I call them, as a little nickname, they'll focus more on drinking water standards and trying to encourage people to care more about those sort of problems. So regardless of specifically what type of ambassador we are, these 23, such as myself, really do provide this environmental stewardship and education to the public. From September to July is when our term actually runs. Not a lot of time, but of course, a lot of people are coming straight out of college, so they know how to do the grind and get things done in that period of time. But of course, this program, like I mentioned, has been running for quite some time. Believe it or not, it is older than myself. It started actually in 2000 and it is on its 25th anniversary. And hasn't really changed since then, has the same type of goals, where you want to provide some sort of stewardship and environmental education focusing on watershed health. So again, watersheds being the area of land where water is going to be draining into, ergo the environment plus the water in consideration. But at the same time, we also like to help out the government or the DEP by providing data from our streams. So I'll clarify this in a little bit, but to give a long story short, we go out to the streams, collect data that is sent to the government so they can compile, how exactly are our streams doing? Are they healthy or are they declining? And that integrated report is available for everyone to see once it is actually published. But of course, like I mentioned, for my SWAT partners, they focus a little bit more on drinking quality standards and drinking water issues in communities. Any quick questions so far before I continue? Just want to make sure.
The watershed management areas, are they, it's been a long time, I have a civil engineering degree, but are they based on HUC, used to be HUC 1 and HUC 10, which, way of defining, how big a watershed is?
Yeah, it's on that HUC scale, definitely. We have been able to break it down on our sake for ZEPA's HUC 14, but I believe it's on the HUC 11 scale, even though I'm not exactly sure where, but it is on the HUC scale.
Okay.
Yes. Good question. Goes on this slide. Yes. So.
Question. So.
Yes.
How do you get the job? I mean, they through your school, Montclair State, they push people toward this, and is it a very is there a lot of demand for it? Is it competitive to get, or are they begging people to come and get it? So
to make a long story short, I was looking for jobs after college, and obviously I had a position at Round Valley, but I wasn't really sure what to do after that one season, which was literally last summer. That was my first time at Round Valley. My neighbor sent me a bunch of links, and coincidentally, one of them was for the Watershed Ambassadors program. And they are definitely a little bit on the competitive side because they really do look for the best of the best, if they please. And there's only so many spots they can fill, even though there are some years where we don't get a full cohort in. So they do definitely try to have a demand and an interest to get as many people as they can, if that answers your question.
and who teaches it, and who gets you set to do this? Like, are they previous ambassadors?
So our current program director was actually a previous ambassador 2-3 years ago, give or take. And we do have a lot of different trainings throughout September, October, and November, and even now to April we are in now. So we do have a lot of periodic times where we learn about the program and how to do remedial paperwork, but also tips on how to give certain presentations, such as an enviroscape, like watershed model, if you will. So we do definitely have guidance as we're going through our program. Of course.
Where is your office based on?
Would have been Great Swamp Outdoor Education Center if the HVAC wasn't under construction.
Wow.
So I'm currently at the NJDB field office in Cedar Knolls. So it's still a nice office by all means. Yeah. Any good questions? Awesome. I know I ask a little bit just because I like to make sure everyone's on the same page. I'm used to doing that when I was teaching lab sections at Montclair State, so it's kind of ingrained into me. Anyways, okay. So actually getting into the nitty gritty of what a watershed ambassador does. There are a lot of different aspects that go into being a watershed ambassador. At the basics of it, as we mentioned, training is obviously important to kind of give us into the right mindset of how we talk about certain topics or how do we actually go about the logistics of the program. But of course, I'll clarify in the next slide. I like to think of the big three of education, community projects, and stream assessments. But there is obviously going to be some aspect of networking because we're branching out to different organizations, nonprofits, schools. So it kind of helps build up this sort of networking for ourselves and the next watershed ambassador. But as you might have gotten the hint from the photo on the slide here, we like to enjoy ourselves when we're actually in this program. And we do like to have a lot of fun, but in a safe way. By all means, I like to clarify that. So getting into the specifics of the program, like I mentioned, we have the big three. First and foremost being our educational aspect, where we be a free resource and provide environmental education on a wide variety of different topics. This could be related to anything like the water cycle or even citizen science and bird watching. As long as we're able to connect it back to water quality and watershed health in some way, we can talk about it. And in the same aspect, with our community projects is also that same idea. If we can tie it back to water quality health in some way, we can really partner with any sort of nonprofit or organization or municipality or school that is interested in a certain project. But of course, with these two I've mentioned already, passions and skills and knowledge can actually steer how we want to meet these requirements for either of these aspects, which I'll clarify again in a moment. But like I also mentioned, we do a little bit of field work for the DEP. So our stream assessments are another major cornerstone of what we do, where we are trained to go out into the stream and get field accredited so we can collect data that is sent to the DEP for use in their integrated reports. So I can talk about this in a little bit as well. Case in point, we do have a little bit of flexibility with exactly what we can do in the program based on our skills and passions, and also the passion of whoever we are partnering with. But without further ado, we can now start to get into the more paper-esque details of what we're actually required to do to kind of build a scale of just what we are facing during our schedule throughout the 10 months. So first and foremost, how much time do we actually dedicate to the program? Technically, we treat it like a full-time position, but we are maximized at 1,700 hours. So we are required to meet this after our 10 months, but we will not be paid in stipend if we go over this. So it's a very weird white line of how we have to spend our time. But nonetheless, how we do it, we are required to give 50 presentations of any sort to any sort of interested party. And also having some sort of pre-post test given to at least 3 classes worth. So 25 times 3 being roughly 75 students. So we can gauge if the topic we talked about actually educated our audience in a way. So presentations are definitely one aspect that we deal with. And again, the topic could be as simple as the water cycle to elementary schools, or maybe even macroinvertebrates and bird watching for college levels. There is a wide band of what we can do. And
Is there going to be a test?
hopefully not. No, I don't know many tests myself, so I'm just as scared as you. Enough. But like I also talked about, partnership projects and community projects are another major aspect. We are required to do at least 8 in total. And in this case, 8 of these can be, whatever we want, but 2 specifically need to be cleanups where we actually remove trash from a site of interest. And then another 2 of this 8 need to be environmental stewardship trainings, which is a big fancy word for environmental stewardship, where we teach people about a sustainable practice that improves their daily life by making them a little bit more eco-friendly. So building a DIY bird feeder or a DIY lanternfly catcher, or even teaching people how we go out to the streams and do an assessment. Because different types of aquatic bugs we find are pollution tolerant to different degrees. So we can teach people, hey, this is actually a really nice macroinvertebrate to see because it's only found in pristine water. So we taught them how to be sustainable and kind of recognize, hey, this stream's actually really clean. We should probably take care of it because these types of bugs are living here. So that's just one simple example. Yes. So some of the big three that we usually hear about are mayflies, stoneflies, and caddisflies. They can't really tolerate pollution, so they're only really found in pristine waters. And I actually went out this morning at 6 o'clock in the morning to collect a bunch of macros for a school I presented at, and there were plenty of mayflies. And this was in Indian Grove Brook, right next to the Sherman B. Hoffman Nature Center for the Audubon Society. So relatively close by, to say the least. Yes. But other parts of New Jersey are not as fortunate, so that's why we like to monitor them and keep an eye on them. Any follow-up questions to that?
What is an example of environmental stewardship training?
So for example, it could be something like, hey, let's teach you how to build a lanternfly catcher because that's a
Okay.
sustainable practice that helps improve our environment. But teaching people about our streams and how we do our assessments teaches them about the different bugs and how to look at different qualities of the stream so they know what is the health of their local streams. So we can play around with exactly what it is. So outside of these 8 projects, 2 have to be cleanups, 2 have to be these ESTs, but we also do a 9th technical project with our host agency or our headquarters, where we pertain our project more so to some sort of topic or event or initiative that they are interested in. So surprisingly enough, for my host agency project in a field office, I was able to actually give a bee abode workshop, teaching people how to build these little bundles of sticks that bees will actually nest in overnight. Bee abodes, or bee hotels are also called.
Okay, got it.
So that's an example because it was in collaboration with my host agency and people in the area took them home and they'll hang them up and it'll support the next bee generation. So that's also technically an example of an EST, if you will. So you know, you're getting the lingo, you're getting the gist, you're kind of like Watershed ambassadors now, basically. So it could be made out of anything, usually wood. So if you get hollow shoots of some sort of woody plants, I technically use knotweed, so a healthy way to get rid of some as well. But people are really good at carpentry, so they've been able to make full houses with a bunch of different intricate tunnels for them. So there's a lot of different ways to make it.
So it's anything with a tube, right?
Yeah, usually bee abodes and bee hotels, they support the tunnel nesting native bees. So it's a good proportion of the native bees we have. They do rely on tunnels, but other types of pollinators and insects do rely on these tunnels as well. So
Can you use bamboo?
I don't see why not. If it's the right size and the right diameter, I don't see why not. Yeah.
So have you decided what your host agency project is for you yet, or you do that during your term?
Usually we talk with our host agency supervisors to decide, and I was originally talking about this bee abode project with Jenny Goss-Myers, who is with the Great Swamp, but she recently retired. So obviously with the situation plus the HVAC scenario, I obviously wanted to collaborate with my actual host agency supervisors at the field office, and we were able to make it work with the bee hotels. Yes.
And how about your cleanups? Have you planned on those yet, or done those
Yeah, I've done a few. I have done.
already for this year?
Mhm.
Oh, when did your term start? I'm sorry.
September of 24,
Oh, okay.
yes. Cleanups I've done so far have been, recently I just did the Adopt a Spot program at the Morristown Station with the Morristown Commission, Environmental Commission.
Like 2 weeks ago?
I believe so, yeah, exactly.
How did that work?
Yeah, it was the same day, so it was a little sticky situation.
Yeah.
I also helped with the Friends of Troy Meadows do a cleanup near their property. I've also done a cleanup, actually at the host agency project as well. So it was separate from that, but it was at the same office location.
Okay.
So I've done a few so far, yes.
So you fulfilled the requirement as well.
Oh, yes, I definitely met that.
But do you do other ones anyway, just because you love it?
Yes. Not even just because of the requirement. Another thing I'll talk about, here it is, perfect. Something we also are required to do is gain volunteer hours. So for example, we have a project run for 2 hours, there's 20 people, 2 times 20 equals 40. 40 volunteer hours was gained from that. So we essentially need to recruit enough volunteers help us on our projects for long enough, so where they have committed a total abundant 500 volunteer hours. But of course, that's not really the inspiration of why we like to do extra projects. It sometimes really is, this is really cool, I want to do this. And then we get together and collaborate and then we make it happen. So it's not necessarily bound on the requirements. And by all means, I am a type 1 anal retentive perfectionist with OCD. And I really do try to stray away from these types of requirements so I can actually enjoy what I'm doing. I don't really want to worry about this, even though I want to graduate from this program, by all means.
And Bernadette, online, she sent some links.
Ooh, yes, I'll actually view them at the end, just in case, yes,
Okay,
thank
do
you.
that.
I think it was the Great Swamp Watershed Association had him speak recently about bees. It was really cool. And he talked about bee hotels and some things being better than others.
Oh my gosh, what a funny coincidence.
Bernadette, what's your last name?
Say that again?
What's your,
Koenig, isn't it?
Yes, Bernadette Koenig, Koenig.
Amendment, okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, thanks for joining and sending the links.
Yeah, thank you much. Any other quick follow-up question? Cool, awesome. So I see we have like 15 minutes, so I can try to be a little bit more bridge if need be. Happy to hear. So, portion of projects, I think we've already covered enough of this. So, one of the other aspects, like I've kind of alluded, are assessments. We have to do 35 throughout our term, 30 specifically of which are actually our stream assessments. So, if I remember correctly, this is the only slide where we have it. So, I'll kind of break it down for you. Essentially, we go out to the streams and collect different types of data for the DEP. Half of which are more of the physical characteristics, like how fast is the stream flowing, what's the average depth, and even going more in depth, like what is the type of erosion on either side of the riverbed, how's the foliage and the riparian buffer, very specific minutia like that. But we also do the biological data for our stream assessments, where we will actually collect these macroinvertebrates, so aquatic bugs, if you will, and the different type of, as I say, the charcuterie board of macros that we collect gives us a good sense of the quality of our stream, because different types like our mayfly can tolerate pollution to different degrees. So we really do like teaching kids, for example, about this, because anyone can go to the stream and lift up a rock and they'll see a macro, which hopefully they'll be able to identify after we teach them. So it kind of gives them a sense of how our streams are doing. But on the government level, obviously that data is valuable because they have a lot more computing power to put it all together, and they'll publish that report to gain a sense of how our streams are doing on a statewide level. But aside from that, our 30 mandatory stream assessments, where we are assigned different sites to actually go to, we all are given a little bit more freedom with our floater assessments, if you will. And we are required to do at least 5. In this case, a floater is a funny word because it doesn't really describe what it is. It is essentially any sort of data or scientific research, study, etc., where we can actually gain a better sense of how the environment is doing with the data collected. So for example, we've done a whole list of floaters during our 25 years. Our popular one is seal monitoring, because that could be a valid floater. We get data about the different seals in the environment. In Sandy Hook, for example, we get a sense of the quality of that habitat, and we would give that to, say, Save Coastal Wildlife, which, funny coincidence, I'm actually wearing their beanie right now. And they'll use that data to gauge with outreach and community involvement and even legislation to help improve quality of the environment. So you can see, as long as it's providing some sort of data that is helping a greater cause and gain greater awareness of some sort of environmental issue or topic, we can count it. I mean, even just to read off the list of stuff we've done here, we've done bird surveys, whether it be for a great backyard bird count or even just ones where we go out and do eBird lists, something simple as that. We've done ichthyoplanting and fish surveys, where we actually collect different types of fish from a local bay. Horseshoe crab surveys will be coming up in the summer, where we'll actually be going out to, say, Sandy Hook or the Delaware and seeing how many eggs are being deposited by these adults. They're kind of on decline. But actually, coincidentally, what we were talking about is the Salt Watch program, where you can order strips that help with chemical testing. You can go to a stream before and after it snows, and you can actually get your own data of the, I guess it would be salinity of the rivers, which is sent to an organization where they will compile that data. But this is just a small list. We've done plenty more related to amphibians and reptiles. We've done microplastics. We've done culvert assessments. So as long as we get some sort of data that gains a better sense of how the environment is doing or on a particular topic, we can do it, to say the least. And I would imagine that in the many more years that this program is hopefully going to be active, there'll be a lot more fun ideas that ambassadors will come up with.
Cindy, are you able to share those with a wider audience?
Pardon, what was the question?
Can you share those? Can you share them with a wider audience?
Result.
The results.
of the.
So technically, there would be a lot of data to sift through, and not even just for this year, but also in the past. There are different ways that maybe I can send links to the organizations that do some of these floaters that we kind of collaborate on. But to necessarily send all of them as is with all the data we've collected would just be a headache and a half. So if you want, I can try to send the links to, say, the organizations that host some of these floaters that we collaborate in. I think that'd be a little more streamlined.
I don't want to look at the data as much as I wanted to know what you do with it. So I'm glad to hear it goes to somebody who can sort through it.
No, yes, it really does depend on the floater. For example, with the seal monitoring data, that data is submitted onto the Safe Coastal Wildlife website. With Salt Watch, I believe it's Salt Watch USA, the organization. They will use that data and compile it. Frog Watch is also its own program where we go out to vernal pools and listen to the different types of frog species. So that data is sent to that organization. So a good number of time, a lot of these floaters are named after their organization or directly tied with a well-known one, so, to say the least. Anything I can clarify on?
I guess on the same matter, you were talking about the stream data you collect and send down to D or send up to DP. How is that reported? You say they have different stream assessment reports. Is it just data flows or just all the data, or do they actually textually describe what the data means for us?
So the short answer to that question is yes, it is kind of in that format. But to give a longer answer, we have these data packets that we fill out both for the habitat and biological, but we do kind of expand it for others like the RETA test for trash accumulation, and also our 3.3 samples where we actually get preserved samples and send that to a lab for taxonomic identification. So it is usually streamlined where we'll send it straight there. But other than that.
But once it's up there, is it just like, oh, here's just the data to look up? Is it like actually analyzed in any respect?
Yes, I believe the specific division at the DEP that processes it is BEARS, if I remember correctly, is the acronym. So there's a division that actually helps process and accumulate this data and kind of formalize it into reports. So there is definitely data processing involved. I know there's also a separate division that's actually responsible for just collecting the samples and transporting it to labs for that. So yeah, there's different sections for that.
I'm just thinking it's like, I could suck it down, roll through AI and get some analysis.
I wouldn't
data.
I wouldn't trust AI to do the math, unfortunately. No. Any other quick follow-up questions? Cool. Okay. So another thing that Watershed ambassadors are required to do, kind of more on the networking side of things, is a variety of different interviews, believe it or not. So we are required to do 2 interviews during our term, one to a career professional. So basically someone in whatever type of field we are interested in, ideally the environmental field, where we might want to pursue that same job in the future. So for example, I interviewed Tanya Sulikowski from the School of Conservation up in Sussex County, because I thought possibly environmental education would be a fun path to go down. So that's one example. But we are also required to do an appointed and elected official. So someone who is appointed or elected by the mayor of a township. Coincidentally, I actually interviewed Brian Morgan and Karen Seidman of the Morris Township Environmental Commission for mine. So yeah, see how there's a network branching here? You can feel it in the room. It's really cool. But Yes, those are just two simple examples. Other ambassadors have done other types of people to interview, especially with the career professional. It really does depend on where exactly you want to go, whether it's more on the research side, environmental education, or the legislation side of things. It is really up to the watershed ambassador's passion and interest. But we can also do a meeting of choice, so to speak, where we go to some sort of meeting that interests us, as long as it's within the kind of realm of socio-environmental, economic sort of thing. I cannot remember off the top of my head specifically what meeting of choice I went to, but I know it was a local homelessness organization in Morris County, somewhere in Morris County. So just one example of that. So, any questions so far about anything watershed ambassador specifically? Because now I'll be going over some of my colleagues' position in the source water protection realm.
How long is your term, 1 year or?
Usually 10 months. There are some instances where people will need to extend their term by an extra week or a month or however, but usually it's September to July.
And when are you actually appointed?
I submitted my application August 15th. I was accepted August 20th, and I started on September 5th. So usually it's within like 2 or 3 weeks of the start date.
Because you guys are really good. I mean, in all my years that I've been with WRWAC, whenever I felt like I was always just behind the 8 ball, whenever I tried to reach the ambassador to join us on a project or to work with us on something or to come and even speak to us, it was always like, oh, I'm booked every day, I'm so busy. So I don't know when, I'm just asking because I'm wondering when the best time is to try to reach the new watershed ambassador. And is Amanda Basca still the
So
supervisor there? Or-
she actually swapped out to another AmeriCorps position, so she's actually handling more of the finances on her side. But the previous program specialist underneath Amanda just became our new program director.
And
So
that name?
Michelle Hatfield.
I see a lot of the photographs.
Yes, she has taken a lot of photos of us during our event.
Thank you.
Of course. Any follow-up questions? Sorry, I know I'm asking a lot. I just want to make sure.
No, all good.
Okay, cool. So specifically, yes.
What can the average person do to improve stream quality or not doing well?
So it really does depend on a site-by-site basis. Sometimes, well, I shouldn't say sometimes, to rephrase. When we're doing our stream assessments, one of the things we actually do in our habitat and biological assessment is we actually write down what we think the greatest threat is to the stream. So depending on where we are, we may say it's oil runoff or erosion, or possibly pet waste, or even an invasive species. So it is unfortunately on a site-by-site basis, but with that said, it really does help us tailor our solution to that stream specifically. So it's not really an easy answer, unfortunately.
But would you contact that particular township, whatever area? And give them some examples of what they could or could not do?
I'm sure that's definitely feasible. I feel kind of lucky, but unlucky at the same time that a lot of the environmental commissions that I've tried to network with have already had such a great foundation of different environmental problems that they're working to fix that there's really little room for actual suggestions because they're already tackling the problem. So I'd say environmental commissions, green teams, shade tree commissions, those organizations are a great resource because they usually have their boots on the ground, already have their tendrils out, feeling what the problems are locally for the environment and already making solutions for it. Yeah.
What about cutting down the amount of salt? That's tricky.
Yeah, that's kind of like a hydra situation. So every time you try to figure out something new to fix it, it seems like more problems arise. I mean, one of my colleagues from Montclair State was researching possible beet juice as a solution to replace that, but it might not be as effective. So it's not a set and done sort of situation.
Doesn't snow as much as it used to.
Exactly. So I don't even think we have to worry about snow to begin with.
This is helpful, but it's not.
Yeah, and even then, we've been thinking about, well, do we change the actual chemical salt that is used or simply just use less? Because when you really do think about it, you just find like anthill mounds on the side of the road when you really just need as much as there would be stars in the sky. Like that sort of dispersal rate of salt grains is really just as much as you need to melt the snow. So it could just be as simple as, educating people on just how much they need, but yeah, it's a tricky topic.
Thank you.
No, of course. I know that was kind of like a runaround answer.
Right,
No, thank you. Okay. So about these swaps, the source water protection ambassadors, by all means, they are still a bona fide watershed ambassador, if you will, but we give them a more specific role and specific name because they dive more into drinking water problems. So they'll actually look for what specific problems are in the region, and then they'll do research about it and actually do their outreach like watershed ambassadors do, but more so gauge towards drinking water standards or lead problems or salt or something like that. Because obviously a lot of problems do relate to water, but almost just as much relate to the water that we drink as well. So they'll focus a lot more on this realm of environmental concern. We do have 3 current swaps in our cohort, which is actually really good because this is still a relatively new position that we're figuring out how is most effective to run it. So we actually have a northern region, a central region, and a southern region swap. So for example, my colleague, which is depicted on the left photo to the right, Emily Vasquez, she actually would usually give this presentation with me and cover this part. She is covering the northern region of New Jersey. So watershed management areas 1 through 6, I believe. So just as an example. And their requirements, relatively similar, but tweaked a little bit to pertain to some of their interests. So they still have to do the 1,700 hours, but they actually get to do fewer less presentations than us. But they do have to still do those pre-post tests to determine whether or not they actually engage and change the audience's understanding.
Are they looking for people to latch on to do work for? I run a water agency.
So definitely that's something.
Would that be they work for, do the work for people like us, or is it more ECs and,
So
what are they?
define work. That's a.
Well, like, I don't know, where they looking to do their volunteer efforts and to perform their educational activities and their stewardship activities, I guess.
Yes, indeed, they would. Are you more in charge of like the northern New Jersey?
Morris County. right?
Oh, Morris County, okay. So I could probably give my colleague email to you. I'm sure she'd be interested because, yeah, of course. A lot of the swaps, again, this is a relatively new position, so they really have been struggling to kind of figure out, what would be appropriate to meet the requirements and how they can actually serve the community. So I'm sure they would be happy to get an opportunity. Awesome, of course. So swaps requirement for 30 presentations, so a little bit less. But in terms of their partnership projects, they are technically not required to do cleanups because they actually replace some of those requirements for tree plantings. So in this way, kind of supplying better riparian buffer and filtering out excess nutrients, whatever, with these plants, what they provide. So this project is more tailored for them. And technically, yes, there's 2 tree plantings they're required to do among the 8, but obviously the other 5 could be whatever they choose to be. It could be a cleanup if they so choose, but they still have to do 1 host agency project. Usually in this case, it will be tied more towards some sort of drinking water problem, like the whole role is actually responsible for. But they do need a little bit less volunteer hours than watershed ambassador, again, just because they're still relatively new. So we're still gauging how much community outreach they are capable of in their current standing. So other requirements, they are required also to visit different meetings, watershed ambassadors as well. I forgot to mention, are also required to visit environmental commission meetings somewhere in their watershed and soil swaps. They also commit the same interviews as well. But since it is a relatively new position and there's still a lot of great work that this role could do for our communities, they also do want to focus a little bit more on building this network. Watershed ambassadors have had luck with 25 years of meeting people along the way. Yet somehow there are some areas where some communities and some organizations still really don't know about watershed ambassadors. So definitely for the swaps, they do have a lot of ground to build, but it's obviously going to be very impactful for the future swaps and for future communities because they're going to get these services a lot more facilitated. And to give an example of one project that is to be determined, but hopefully still going to happen, is the lead service line replacement project. To make a long story short, because I'm sure my colleague would be able to give a much better explanation of this, they essentially wanted to collaborate with some major names such as Rutgers and the Utilities Authority to see exactly how they could help with the lead service line replacement program. Because there are still some houses throughout the country that have lead and galvanized lead pipes. So we want to do a sort of trial run to see, hey, how many people can we provide outreach with, where we actually go to some of these locations and politely and with consent, go inside their house and determine which houses need to have their pipes replaced. So this was based on the 2021 legislation, obviously with this new program coming about. But it is still to be determined exactly whether this is going to happen, because a lot of the big names are still pending on logistics and planning, unfortunately. So as I mentioned, we have a list here. We're going to partner with Trenton Waterworks, NJ Future, and the New Brunswick Water Utility in cooperation with Rutgers. So hopefully in the next few months, we will get this started, or at least build a foundation for next year's cohort to actually get this project up above the ground. So I believe that is
That project done for commercial or residential?
the trial run for this was going to be at College Housing at Rutgers, so it was going to be mainly localized for residential for now, yes.
Okay.
But I know we were also thinking of possibly doing some trial runs in New Brunswick to basically do the same thing, go into houses and see which ones would need to be replaced. Oh, no worries.
It's gonna be about 7, so I'm running a little late.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. That's a great
Of course.
program.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much
everything
for
you're doing, and hopefully, we'll make some more meetings. All right, thank you.
We also have it recorded, so in case you miss anything.
Oh, okay.
Recording it.
Yep, good, great.
Awesome, thank you much.
Good night.
Good night.
So actually a very perfect coincidence. So all the boring stuff is done, and now I get to share some examples of what we've done so far in the 6.5 months of the program. So,
Okay.
I'll have to leave. Volunteer.
oh, no worries at all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. No, of course. Thank you very much.
See you.
We're here for the whole.
No worries. No, of course. Okay.
Good night.
You can read that.
See you soon.
So, any quick questions about any of the stuff I've talked about so far before we get to some of these fun examples? This isn't a big part of the presentation, but still, I just want to make sure I get any cobwebs out of the corner, so to speak.
Yeah, we're good.
And Anthony, I have
Oh, perfect.
actually, I've
Mhm.
been trained as a stream assessment monitor and did it once through the Raritan Headwaters, and our info also goes to the DEP. Are there many organizations like that who do that also? Do you know?
That I know of, very funny coincidence. I was speaking with one of the teachers at Livingston High School where I gave the presentations earlier today, and she was actually with a consulting company in Maryland and New Jersey that helped provide sort of, not stream assessments, but they did kind of do these environmental assessments and quality of the general environment. Other than that, I do know that one branch of the DEP specializes in collecting biological data from streams. But obviously, I would imagine that there's also some other branches that do more chemical testing, so to speak. So unfortunately, off the top of my head, I can't really think of specific examples. But again, I definitely know there's a branch of the DEP specifically in this role for collecting this data in the streams, very similar to how we do it.
Got it. Thanks.
Of course. Any other quick questions? Awesome. So I'll try to go this a little bit quick because I know I am definitely well above my designated schedule time, so I want to be respectful, but I appreciate you letting me ramble for the past few hours. So just some examples of what we've done in the past 6 months of our term. You know, we can start from left to right. For example, the one all the way on the left, this was an example of the Macro Blitz workshop at the Winter Angie Conference at the School of Conservation with the Director of Education, Tanya Sulikowski, taking a photo of us at the stream, trying to identify all the macroinvertebrates that we could sample as possible. You might not be able to tell, but I'm the person with all the blue all the way in the corner. So I am in the photo, and so is my colleague in here. But that's just one example of one of the things that was actually mandatory to go to this workshop, which is really interesting to think, because we've also gone to the fall Angie? No, we went to Anjek in the fall as another workshop, and we just went to another one at what was it, TCNJ? There was another conference at TCNJ. It's leaving me at the moment because you can see I'm running on fumes. But maybe. No, I can't remember off the top of my head. It'll come to me in the middle and I'll shout it out, I guarantee. But one example of something mandatory that we're actually able to have fun and enjoy learning about different types of opportunities that we can take to our presentations in our projects. But on the top and the middle, one example of one of our ESTs where we are taking out some students to the stream and teach them how we do our assessments. Because again, different bugs in the water can tolerate pollution to different degrees. So if we teach people about them, they can recognize them on their own and judge the health of their streams on their own time. So a sustainable knowledge and practice, if you will. But all the way on the top right, sometimes we like to be less hands-on and do something more visual. So this is the watershed model I was talking about, the Enviroscape, where we can actually teach people more so how pollution flows through the environment and different sources it may came from. But that's more like the educational presentation side of things. But for our floaters, for example, on the bottom and the middle, we were able to do some ichthyoplankton or fish surveys as well, where we were able to catch some pretty interesting things. So this is Swap Emily Vasquez here, who would have came to the presentation. I've been giving it elsewhere. So this is an example of her holding one of the things that we have caught, which is, again, in the middle of the evening, you'd be surprised anything would be active. But all the way on the bottom right, these may be some familiar faces. I had actually met the Morristown Environmental Commission before I even knew who they were at one of their semi-annual cleanups. And then afterwards, we decided, hey, let's do a project together. And then the rest is history with the Adopt Spot program. Other things we have done, again, we do have a lot of trainings and mandatory events, but we're still able to learn a lot and have fun along the way. So these are just some examples of some of our trainings. At the top left, we were practicing doing tree plantings up in Vernon. So especially for the swaps, this was a valuable training, so to speak, an event for them to kind of learn these skills. But there are some mandatory events, some workshops like AmJEC, where we can actually get a sense of what are other environmentalists and other consulting companies or other engineering firms really working on and how they tackling certain problems. And I like to give a quick little shout out to the guy all the way in the right-hand side. That is indeed the Commissioner Sean WRWAC, who attended the workshop, which was pretty cool. We got to meet him for a little bit. But sometimes when we like to practice our skills, it can be on a much more casual setting. So on the bottom left, we went out to Hackabarney State Park to practice our bird, our mushroom, our tree, and general plant ID in the wilds. But to give an example of another EST or stewardship training we can teach people how to assemble rain barrels to be more sustainable with capturing and reusing water. So we learned how to do this at the State Barnegat Bay headquarters down in Barnegat as yet another example. Some other things that we have done pertain more so, for example, to some of these as cleanups. So this is my colleague and I wheeling away some tires that we found at a cleanup. And in fact, on the top right is that very same day with some of the examples of stuff we had collected. And in fact, there was a picture all the way back with a whole mound of tires. That was also from the same day. That was near Duck Island in Trenton, I believe. So a very isolated path with a lot of illegal dumping, to say the least. But we do also have some other restoration projects we can get involved in, such as the top middle, where we did I believe this is a shoreline restoration project. I was not involved with this specifically, but they essentially replanted different types of grasses to help reinforce the sand. But again, to demonstrate, we like to have some casual practice where we will actually go out and do some IDs and practice that, or even practice some native plant ID from the Passaic River in a little paddle after a land acknowledgement ceremony. So you can see there's a lot that could possibly happen in this amount of time. But even more examples, I can keep going. There's just a wide variety of memories we've already been able to make. For example, at the top left, training about different types of activities you can do in the classroom and different age groups you may hit. All the way at the bottom right, they launched 24 event for AmeriCorps, where we got to meet other type of AmeriCorps servants and different types of programs that are also going on to help serve our communities. But again, there's a lot of different things I can talk about for the program, a lot of different memories. And hopefully, we'd like to think that some of these efforts will come to fruition. So there's a good chance that it actually will. And obviously that starts with advertisement. So these are just some examples of the projects that some of us have done in the past 6 months, whether it be a type of cleanup or a tree planting or a seed planting, or even to feature mine specifically in the bottom, second to left, the adopt a spot cleanup. Coincidentally, we were just talking about that. There's a wide variety of different things we can do. And case in point, it really is based on our skills and our knowledge and also our passion and how we can steer our way to fit these requirements and meet the expectations and desires of people that we are partnering with, whether it be at the community level or the town level, or even just at a school level. We are a free resource that are more than happy to just provide information about what a watershed is or what is really happening in our environment. With all the different types of people who have been in this program, for example, myself being a marine biologist, I can specialize in certain areas to give special information, but of course, it is up to us and up to our partners to determine what we can get done, essentially. So that is all I have for this presentation. I understand it was definitely a lot. So if there's anything that I can try to re-clarify before we hopefully get to the true agenda for the day, I'm more than happy to do so.
Thanks, Anthony.
Of course.
Yeah, excellent.